The hour's getting late. I want to share a little on a briefer message, so you'll like that. There's a couple of things in the text that I find really compelling, and I was doing a little bit of research over something, and I came across a reflection, an essay really, by Judith Plasko, who is one of the foremost thinkers in terms of feminist Jewish writing and thinking. She's an incredible professor in Manhattan. In any case, she recognizes that in this Torah portion, there's 3 different times that we're told to remember things. It's an extraordinary essay. And in this remembering, it resonated with me because I often teach, and some of you have heard this before to be sure, when we go through the Torah, I don't look at it as history, I look at it as memory. And memory, I find, is very powerful. Memory can move me. History is interesting, but memory is going to be the things that help impact my own choices and decisions and how I move forward. And she points out that there's 3 different times in this particular Torah portion where we're told to remember. The first one is, remember that you were a slave in Egypt, therefore observe this commandment. And we hear that all of the time, remember that you were slaves. And we still say that. We don't say that our ancestors were slaves. We say that avadim hayinu. We were the ones who were slaves. It's part of our memory. The second one is a strange one. The second one talks about tzara'at, which is the skin affliction. It's this scaly affection that talks about. People think it's leprosy, but it's not really accurate. But we've heard that before. So in cases of a skin affection, be most careful to do exactly as the Levitical priests are instructing you. And then it says, remember what your God Adonai did to Miriam on their journey, because when she was gossiping and talking about kind of naughty things, she got this tzara'at. So it's a warning, remember, because if you remember Miriam, right, if we talk too much, then we could get, these terrible itchy things. The third time, it says, remember what Amalek did to you on the journey after you left Egypt. Now, Amalek is this ultimate enemy of ancient Israel. And they're an enemy because they attack at the weakest people. In the back of the folks marching forward, they strike from behind. So we look down at Amalek because they're striking at the folks that are the weakest folks, the folks that aren't moving so quickly. So maybe they're older, maybe they're younger, maybe they have disability. They are the more vulnerable parts of the entire people. So we have 3 remembers. One is, you were a slave in Egypt. Remember that. You've got to hold on to that. We have to remember about Miriam because she was gossiping and speaking about other people, Lashon Hara, that she got tzara'at. And the third one is, remember Amalek and what he did to you when you left Egypt. And then it says, you shall blot out the memory of Amalek. You can't even talk about it. We're supposed to forget, but you have to remember. So Jewish. I don't think Jewish identity is the most important thing to us. I know that it feels important for a lot of us, but I don't think identity is going to make meaning in our lives. It just might make us feel good. Memory, I think, has much greater impact on us. It's so much more powerful. Remembering that we were slaves in Egypt is going to remind us on how we should behave, because people used to beat us up and they oppressed us, and we have to remember that. So don't forget that you were once a slave. Okay, that's an easy one. We'll come back to Miriam. Let's look at Amalek. We should remember about Amalek and never forget and still blot out his name, because what a terrible thing to do is to attack people at their most vulnerable times. It's shameful and it's inhumane. It's not human. And so we remember about Amalek. We have to stand up. So then what's going on with this second one with Miriam? Follow the rules of tzara'at, right? This scaly affection. And don't forget what Miriam did. Well, now I'm starting to feel a little bit more disappointed, because I think Miriam did lots of cool things, right? Some of us are like, yes, she did. It's important. What are they? I'm not testing you. The idea of her celebrating once we got out of the land of Egypt and crossed the sea, and she's bringing all of the folks together and dancing with her timbrels, that's an incredible thing. joy of celebration, freedom. The rabbis talk about how a well follows her. It's because of Miriam that everybody has water when they needed nourishment. That's important. She advocates for good and for justice and for the recognition of what she does. She's a prophetess. So why in these things about remembering, we were only remembering that she was gossiping? That doesn't feel right. And Plaskow is calling it out and saying memory can be this amazing thing for us, but we also, if we're more honest, can know that memories can also cause some pain. Memories include some hurt once in a while. Part of what we need to talk about, sometimes out loud, is how those who came before us talked differently about women and didn't always think about all of the gifts that they would bring, whatever that they were doing. They talk about Miriam as a gossiper, not Miriam as a leader, not Miriam as a prophetess. Our words sometimes have to be recognized that the memories that are being advanced have to be challenged a little bit, because there's a bigger picture when it comes to Miriam, much more than her one mistake about gossiping. Aren't we, according to someone who I'm reading about every day, I can't stop reading and listening to him, Brian Stevenson in Montgomery, he says that we're, in the context of mass incarceration, he talks about people are more than the worst thing that they've done. People are more than the worst thing that we've done. Wouldn't it be nice if people held us in that light, that we're more than the worst thing that we've done? And we've done things wrong, but that doesn't have to define us. And it shouldn't have to define Miriam. Judith Plaskow in this essay is recognizing the power of memory and all of the good it is, because if we remember that we're from Egypt and we were slaves and we were beat up, then we can't sit idly by at the blood at our neighbors and the blood of our neighbor. When they are bleeding, we have to respond. We cannot stand idly by. Now let's go back to Amalek for a second, because I said that we blot out his name because he attacks from the back. But now I have another question to you in the same spirit of how we are remembering Miriam. Why did the ancient Israelites leave them all in the back? Why couldn't they have been surrounded? Why weren't they in the middle and protected? Why weren't they included? Why weren't they celebrated for how fast they went? Right? Why is that? We only think about Amalek's mistake, and it's a horrible mistake. But the Israelites, they weren't the attackers, and they weren't complicit. But they didn't do a good enough job either, because they let the weakest link linger in the back. So our synagogue's vision statement, one little piece of it, it says this: we aspire to be an open tent, a warm greeting, open arms, no judgment. We welcome diversity of ability, background, color, gender expression, age, sexual orientation, religious practice, and political belief. We celebrate the strength and support the need in everyone. That's what the Israelites should have done, relating to the weakest folks. Had them in the middle, brought them into the tent, not just in the back. And when it comes to Miriam, let's blot out the memory of Amalek. When we create Jewish communities in which the perpetual exclusion of some groups of people are so contrary to current values that it's incredible to even think about it that way. We blot out the memory of Amalek when we commit, according to Dr. Plaskow, we blot out the memory of Amalek when we commit to remembering the history of inequality alongside the efforts towards transformation, equity, and respect. I think we have a lot to learn. I don't think we're quite done. And in this month of Elul, of reflection and figuring out who we are, where we've been, and where we're going, this is the message that we need to keep talking about. How to bring folks into the middle, how to help ourselves find our way there when somebody lets us and brings us in, to go with them, and then to have open and honest conversations about when we've hurt, when we've been hurt, and when we've hurt others. How do we change a world based on a new kind of an awareness that's bubbling up in our world? And we better be listening. We better be listening. Because the gates of repentance are about to open, and we have a chance to move into a new year with strength and dignity and a new kind of integrity, something maybe just a little bit better than before. So, thank you, Miriam, aside from the tzara'at. Thank you, ancestors, for giving us memories that are going to be provocative and evocative so that we can journey wholly with an H and with a W. Let's turn